Thank you, Mr. President, for calling this day of prayer and remembrance. We needed it at this time.
When Billy Graham passed away in 2018, his children made a surprising discovery in his North Carolina study. Hidden in drawers and cabinets were private writings that revealed the inner struggles of America's most famous preacher. These journals exposed his crisis of faith that nearly ended his ministry, the truth behind his relationship with Nixon, and his biggest regrets. Billy Graham was born on November 7, 1918, near Charlotte, North Carolina, on a 300-acre dairy farm. His childhood was filled with hard work, waking up early to milk 20 cows before and after school. This routine instilled in him discipline and a strong work ethic. At 15, an unusual event shaped his future. His father made him and his sister drink beer until they felt sick. This moment led Billy to avoid alcohol for the rest of his life. As a teenager, Billy was more interested in baseball and girls than religion. But everything changed when he was 16. In 1934, a revival meeting in Charlotte, led by preacher Mordecai Ham, deeply moved him. Though he couldn't recall the sermon, he felt an undeniable pull to walk forward and give his life to Christ. That decision set the course for his future, eventually leading him to preach to millions worldwide. At 18, Billy enrolled at Bob Jones College, but struggled with the strict rules. The founder even told him he'd never amount to much. Determined, he transferred to Florida Bible Institute, where he found his calling. He practiced preaching in the most unusual ways, speaking to birds, trees, and even alligators by the river. In 1938, while walking on a golf course, he made a life-changing commitment. "I'll do whatever you want, God." The following year, at just 20, he became a Southern Baptist minister. During World War II, Billy's ministry took off. In 1944, at just 25, he gave his first Youth for Christ sermon in Chicago, drawing over 2,000 people. He soon traveled across the U.S., Canada, and Europe, speaking in over 300 cities. Youth for Christ rallies were high-energy events filled with preaching, music, and testimonies from celebrities, attracting crowds of up to 70,000. In 1949, a turning point came with the Los Angeles Crusade. Preaching under a giant tent, Billy started with modest crowds of 3,000. But when radio host Stuart Hamblin and war hero Louis Zamperini converted, media mogul William Randolph Hearst took notice. He ordered newspapers to promote Billy, and attendance skyrocketed. The crusade, meant to last 3 weeks, extended to 8, drawing 400,000 people and making Billy a national figure. By 1950, Billy realized he needed an organized ministry. That year, he founded the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, BGEA, in Minnesota, with the goal of spreading the gospel worldwide. One of its first projects was the radio program Hour of Decision, which began in November 1950 and quickly gained millions of listeners. Billy Graham's journey, from a small-town farm boy to a global evangelist, was filled with challenges, but his faith and determination shaped one of the most influential ministries in history. The Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, BGEA, grew into a global force, with offices in London, Sydney, and Buenos Aires. It expanded beyond crusades, using magazines, films, and TV programs to spread its message. Long before founding BGEA, Billy and his team committed to strict ethical standards. In 1948, they met in Modesto, California, and created the Modesto Manifesto, promising financial transparency, moral integrity, collaboration with churches, and honesty about their success. This commitment earned the trust of millions. Graham's reach extended worldwide. His first major international crusade in London in 1954 lasted 12 weeks, drawing over 2 million people. In apartheid-era South Africa in 1973, he demanded integrated seating at his crusade, boldly calling racism a sin. He also preached in communist Hungary in 1977, opening doors to speak in North Korea in 1992. In 1995, Graham pioneered a historic satellite broadcast, simultaneously reaching 185 countries in 116 languages. Over 10 million people tuned in, with 2.5 million responding to his message. By the time he retired, he had spoken to 215 million people in 185 countries. His largest crowd gathered in South Korea in 1973, 1.1 million strong. Beyond live events, Graham harnessed media to spread his message. His radio show, Hour of Decision, launched in 1950 and reached 800 stations by 1954. His 1957 New York crusade aired on ABC for 16 weeks, drawing 96 million viewers, 70% of U.S. households with a TV. In 1981, his African broadcast reached 50 million people, requiring his team to fly in generators for remote areas. He also engaged readers. His newspaper column, My Answer, reached 5 million. And in 1956, he launched Christianity Today, which became a major evangelical voice. Embracing technology, he launched a Christian website in 1989, helping 1.5 million people annually by 2008. Billy Graham's journey was one of faith, influence, and controversy. A personal crisis of belief in 1949 led to his breakthrough Los Angeles crusade, catapulting him to national fame. As his influence grew, he became a spiritual advisor to world leaders, particularly Richard Nixon. However, his deep political connections led to later regret, especially in the aftermath of the Watergate scandal. Graham took a stand against segregation at his crusades, even tearing down segregation ropes in 1953 to ensure integrated seating. However, he deliberately avoided direct activism in the civil rights movement. While he later admitted he could have done more, his legacy remains one of faith, influence, and personal growth. Civil rights leaders were frustrated by his reluctance to challenge unjust laws. Graham believed the best way to fight racism was through changing hearts with faith, often emphasizing that both black and white people needed a personal relationship with Jesus to overcome racial divisions. However, this approach failed to address systemic injustice, and many activists felt it wasn't enough. During the height of the civil rights movement, Graham remained silent on several key events. When peaceful protesters in Birmingham were attacked with fire hoses and police dogs in 1963, he largely refrained from speaking out. He also chose not to attend the March on Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. Instead, he made statements like, "Only when Christ comes again will white and black children walk hand in hand." To many, this sounded like he didn't believe change could happen in the present. Graham's hesitation to fully support the movement was partly due to his close ties with political leaders, including segregationists. In 1965, during the Selma voting rights campaign, he criticized protesters' tactics, stating, "I don't condone violence. It's not the best way." This upset civil rights leaders, who saw nonviolent protest as essential to achieving justice. His relationship with King was complex. In 1957, Graham invited King to pray at his New York crusade, where King called for unity and brotherhood. King later praised Graham for addressing racial issues, but their relationship grew strained over time. In 1958, King urged Graham not to let a segregationist politician introduce him at a Texas crusade. But Graham ignored this advice, insisting he didn't get involved in politics. Later, Graham claimed that King advised him to stay in stadiums and influence white audiences rather than participate in protests. However, there is no evidence of this conversation, and some scholars doubt it ever happened. Beyond his public ministry, his marriage to Ruth Bell Graham lasted 63 years, and she remained his greatest source of support, despite his frequent travels. Over time, his Christian beliefs shifted from strict fundamentalism to a broader, more inclusive approach. He worked alongside Catholics and mainline Protestants, which angered some evangelicals, but helped expand his reach. While he held conservative views on abortion and marriage, he emphasized kindness over judgment. Even as he battled Parkinson's disease and other health challenges, Graham remained dedicated to his faith. In his final years, he lived in quiet reflection before passing in 2018 at the age of 99. His life's work touched millions, leaving an enduring impact on global Christianity.